Hi guys, welcome back to Life Education Podcast. Today, Caroline and I are meeting with Catherine Williams. Catherine and I, we met originally actually at a focus group in one of the clinics here.
Yeah.
Maybe, was it
Ended
a year?
up and running, wasn't it?
Yeah. They were inviting sort of people in the industry around to have a brainstorm as to how we could best improve.
That's right, there
things.
was all sorts of different people from... there was certainly nobody on female fitness there, but there's a lot of very serious,
and that's what
qualified people there.
We'd never met before, and
No.
that was where it was brought to my attention that you have your experience with female people in the fitness industry.
Yeah.
So do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit and how you ended up?
Sure. Obviously, my name is Catherine Williams, and I work specifically with women, primarily pre- and postnatal, and then now pre- and postmenopausal as well. So, I wouldn't have a clue how to train a man. That's it. But I think when you come to working with this as well, it's more than just training, it's coaching and things. And I've come to that over a long period of time. Because when I started out in fitness, it had always been a sideline. And then I think when I came to Dubai was when I just went into fitness full time. And back then, step was the thing. It's a long time ago.
Step aerobics.
I was teaching step aerobics, and yes, I was in a leotard.
Mr. Motivator.
Yeah, no. And the high top.
Did you have a headband?
No,
I
never wore a headband.
I'm picturing Olivia Newton-John.
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, we had sunshines. And what happened was, this is before I had kids. I just said, right, I need to know more about all this stuff. And I went to America to IDEA, to the convention there. And randomly, 13 other women from Dubai came as well. So it's like the step aerobics instructors from Dubai went to Vegas, and it was bonkers. And the jet lag was mad. I mean, I was doing fireman workouts at 5 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. So I just basically went through this week of IDEA on about 5 hours sleep.
What's
it was
IDEA?
nonsense. IDEA, it's a huge American. It's like like the American Union and governing body of fitness. There, it's not reps, which would be the ethical control lot. In the UK, you would have FitPro with fitness professionals. America is an IDEA thing where the IDEA is where they have various levels of groups, from personal trainers to companies to instructors and things. And they have huge bank of research. They do an awful lot of data release. So I think an idea, what they do is they investigate all sorts of wacky research behind fitness. You know, they were the first place. That was 20 odd years ago, and people were swinging out of silks, which now you see in
Caroline does
fitness
a little
classes.
bit of it.
Yeah, that's
Aerials. I love it.
It's quite brave, though, isn't it? I think you have to be very brave.
I'm addicted. No, I don't do the silks. So it's more like a hammock. So you have like a little seat at the bottom. So
you do see the
seat.
Yeah.
It's much nicer.
So anyway, I went off to this IDEA thing, and there was people there like, Poliquin goes, Charles Poliquin. He's spoken at it, and various other people, and it blew me away. And I remember going to, the first time I'd ever been on a Swiss ball was there. And they had these guys up from Florida, because they got some big old gals down there, and they got to show you how to handle a ball.
Nice
I think this is amazing. And I started going to the lectures rather than the classes, and I got really into the egghead side of fitness.
Yeah.
And that was it then. I just started, I still taught some classes, but I just got so stuck into it. And I came back, and then I got pregnant. And I was going through this pregnancy, and nobody knew what to do, really. The research was ridiculous to be behind. And because I'd been on such recent training, and I was learning to really look at focus groups, and now I'm doing a psychology degree as well, which makes me really picky about the kind of research that I see. And I see figures and things. I want to see this focus group. I want to see where it is. I want to see where it's multicultural, who did it, what the ranges were, what their baselines were. I want the information to be really credible. I'm really snippy about that.
I think
actually,
I think like a few years ago, it would have been a lot of trial and error, because I don't know if this is accurate, but I know that in the past, a lot of women, particularly say when my mum was pregnant with me, she was, and this is in the 80s, she was bed rest. And that's what women did. Bed rest, yeah. And it's only in the last 20 years that now women are like, well, no, I'm not going to rest for 9 months. That's ridiculous. I want to have a life, and I want to do everything that's normal, as you should.
Oh, yeah. I mean, certainly when I got that's what got me into it, because when I got pregnant, nobody knew anything about that. I thought, this is bonkers. I've got to figure this out, because, clearly I was fit as a flea. I did not need bed rest.
Yeah.
And the other thing was as well, because I was 35 when I was pregnant, I was deemed to be a geriatric mother, and I was in high risk for everything. And I remember going to these antenatal groups thinking, really, I'm probably fitter than this nurse and healthier, and I've probably got more food knowledge. So
what was the consensus at the time? What were people recommending for you to do at the time in terms of health and fitness?
Walking and swimming.
Okay.
Walking and swimming.
I think
remember,
you're
eating for two. So wrong. Terrible first pregnancy, put on zillions of weight, all the rest of it. And by the time I actually came out of that pregnancy feeling terrible and experienced postnatal depression. And the thing that got me through it was exercising. Not crazily, but I worked with, my mum was quite a lot older than me, but she was, my parents were actually terribly progressive considering their background. They were both from the country in Ireland, they're both from farms. But my father had been an athlete, and I remember him saying to me, nobody is designed to sit on their backside just because you've had a baby. Up and out. So that was it. And I remember saying, I'm just going to get a walk. I mean, I think my baby was about 4 weeks old. I'm thinking, I'm just going to walk for an hour every day. And this is key. Part of that walking, I went out and I sweated and I walked. But part of that walking was time out for me. My brain whizzed. My emotions whizzed initially. And then it started to calm down. And I came back a happier person, a happier parent, a better person. And it got me into looking at more and more at things, because what was out there at the time was ridiculous. The information was on, studies that would have been conducted in the 80s, and this was 2001. So by the time I had my second one in 2004, I was so genned up.
So how was your second pregnancy different? What did you do differently the second time around?
Second time around, well, I was fit going into both, and that's what I would say to anybody. The ideal way to get pregnant is to be as healthy as you can beforehand.
Yeah.
That's important. I experienced different pregnancies, in that the first one I was never ill, whereas the second one I felt, which was a boy, I felt horrendous for about 3 months. But that was quite good, because it gave me empathy for the people I trained. So I've had 2 very different pregnancies. During that second pregnancy, I did not consume a thing that was not organic. I was like a demon. I really, really was careful with the food. I ate like plenty, and it was fine. But my only treat was I allowed myself a coffee every day. Enjoyed that and relaxed in it. I exercised 6 days a week, and this is key for pregnant people. You need to exercise more often, but at lower intensity. So if somebody is exercising 4 days a week, and they're doing, say, a couple of really high hit sessions, and then some good strength training, and maybe they have a bit of yoga or something, that changes. It depends on the pregnancy. Every pregnancy is different. But certainly for me, what I did was I dropped my intensity, but I kept exercising.
So what were you doing? What types of exercise?
For a pregnant mother, if you have another child, a great thing to do is put the older one in the buggy and walk like crazy for about half an hour. So the child's hitting G-force in the buggy, but you're all happy. The child's getting his mother's attention. That's a great bit of cardio. I did treat myself. I employed a personal aqua trainer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he was fantastic, and he changed. See, this is the difference. It's like what I've seen you guys talking already about before. This is the difference between getting good fitness people and getting the rest. Okay? You can go to anybody and lie on the floor and do bridges, or sit in a ball and do hip rotations. You can do that while you're waiting to have the baby. With him, what I liked about him was that he changed my swim stroke as I got bigger, and how my back changed. He kept watching me like that. So I tried to be like that.
So
with
what difference
clients.
did he make? Like, what were the adjustments?
Well, for example, as I got a lot bigger, he took me out of anything breaststroke, because I was starting to really hyperextend, and it was my spine, and it was bothering me when I got out of the water.
So how big is bigger? What month are you in or around?
Oh, I don't suppose when I was bigger, I got big at around 7 months. Yeah. Big.
Yeah.
And it depends also. That's another thing you have to watch with pregnancies, because some babies, it talks about the boys are at the front, the girls are at the side. Whatever the gender, you have to see where the weight is displacing. And also, the other thing is that babies move. So pregnant people, when you're looking after them, can be experiencing discomfort. And sometimes a baby moves into a particular area and stays there for a little bit. And that can really affect the stability of the pelvis, for example. What I see a lot of in pregnant women are pelvic instability, because they're in discomfort, and if they're standing a lot or on their feet a good bit, they tend to transfer the weight onto one leg. So one leg becomes quite dominant, the other one isn't so much, and then when you start to work on the other one, that becomes quite painful. And the other thing to remember is that because the baby grows up, the rib cage lifts and expands, and this is a huge effect on cervical health.
Right.
They come up here, get a lot of scalene tension. It's really, really important to train people when they're in their best possible position. So I would say, if working with pregnant women, you probably spend the first 20 minutes mobilizing, stretching them. And throughout the workouts, what I personally find effective, which is one of my trial and error things, is that they actually can get quite tight. Now, this is because you have relaxin in the body when after 12 weeks, and that is the hormone that releases the
mobile,
joints,
yeah.
makes you hypermobile. And for some people, that's great because they're actually quite, tonic tight people.
And just that's your body. The female body releases that in order to allow the actual birth to happen through the pelvis.
That's it.
Yeah.
But the relaxant doesn't just focus on the pelvis, because it's released throughout the whole body. So everywhere becomes, even their jaw.
Yeah. It doesn't affect the collagen in the ligaments.
I don't know exactly.
Okay.
But yes, it will. That's what it will do. It goes into, it's exactly it. Yeah, well done. Yeah, it's ligament laxity that will occur with that. It's not really in the body and stuff, in the muscle. So what will happen with some people is that it can be quite good for them, and you can just keep encouraging the stretching. But for a lot of people who are already, say there's somebody with hypermobile hamstrings, for example, you'll find that their quads at the front will really lock on, because their body's going, hang on a second, I'm actually unstable here, and I'm having to really clamp up at the front to make this work. So you've got to be very aware of that. And obviously things like rolling is a bit more complicated, trying to get a pregnant woman onto a roller. And some people are, no problem about getting down the floor, shoving the bump over to the side and doing stuff. Other people are terrified. And that's also cultural.
Right.
We were talking there earlier about your mum when she was having you. The cultural differences are phenomenal in how you handle pregnancy and babies. You've got to think there's people out working in fields with newborn babies strapped on their back,
Yeah.
And then there's other people just lying in a bed. The worst thing you can do is lie in a bed unless you have to have bed rest for the safety of the unborn baby. But the cultural differences in how you approach pregnancy is stunning. And then I do think that there's a misconception of fitness as well.
Yeah, maybe you can discuss those a little bit more, because I'm quite intrigued. What do you mean by cultural differences? What have you noticed and seen?
Some really daft things.
Yeah, because in the Middle East you see so many people from so many different cultures, and everybody practices lifestyle. How do I say this? Parts of their life very differently.
Oh, they will, yeah. And I think you'll find that, for example, within the local families, it's unlikely they're going to exercise in the first 12 weeks within the Emirati community. However, that's becoming really progressive. Or maybe it's just because they know me, I don't know. But you find the first 12 weeks, they tend to say no. And I understand that, because the first trimester is the dangerous time. That's when you can lose a baby. That's when most people do lose them, So when training women, you really need to know their history. If it's a first pregnancy, it's green field, you have to just work with it. But if people have had these issues, you need to know
like
about them.
Miscarriages, things like that.
And why.
Or trouble conceiving.
Yes. And sometimes it's just simply just a chemical disorder, and that's a medical thing. But you need to know about stuff. And people sometimes don't know that much about their body. In fact, I actually trained somebody postnatally. She had 4 children, okay? In 4 years, she'd had 2 children and then twins. So in 4 years, she'd had 4 kids, right? At no point had anybody told her she had scoliosis.
Oh, wow.
And she was wondering why she had backache, And it was so simple. I mean, she just did that roll down. And I said, okay, fine, do you born with that scoliosis? Or she said, what's scoliosis? Okay, let's start back here. Nobody gave her that postnatal care. No medic looked at anything except her pelvic region and her children.
Right.
And this is, there's such a mechanical approach to this type of thing. We're a whole unit. Just because one bit is working in a car doesn't mean every other bit is working. I mean, if it's a car like mine, there's always lights coming on. I'm thinking, okay, service. Yeah. But that alarms me. That, I've come across people they're getting an MRI, and they've full medical insurance, but the MRI is covering this much of their spine. You think, surely while you're in there, would you not do the whole spine?
Yeah.
It's another half an hour. But how can you, just because these 2 little bits are funny, did it ever occur to all these people who are so well qualified that maybe the other bits attached to it might have caused this? But you come across also like this daft questions I've been asked. For example, if I do squats, particularly if they're low, will the baby come out? And I was thinking, have you seen childbirth? I mean, seriously, if that was what happened, people would be coming to me like that.
Yeah.
Squats, let's do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Do you want it now? Just cough.
You'd be employed by the hospitals.
And I look at people thinking, you wish, darling, I wish. So, well, it doesn't work like that. You need a lot of leg strength. But I won't be standing and thinking, okay, you need to go in and have a look at a birth unit in a hospital. That's important. I mean, that's one of the things I do actually have in my eggheadery. I do go and have a check of the different facilities that are used.
Oh, I'm interested. What type of facilities?
Well, just to see how people
are
birth
delivering.
options.
Yeah.
I
know recently, sorry to interrupt you
No.
there, my one of my younger sister's friends had a baby in Australia, and she's a very young mum, so no risk.
Yeah.
She was in her early 20s, and I had no idea, but in some hospitals in Australia there are swimming pools that you can have a baby in the water.
That's fantastic.
In a hospital.
Yeah,
How amazing is that?
Yeah.
I was like, really?
It's a lot better than a blow-up pool.
In the backyard.
Yeah. No, just to see where they are and things, like how a lot of things are, the beds stay up to here with stirrups there that are, these wire things that you stick your feet. You don't know.
I'm listening. I'm learning.
There are metal
It's
things
like,
you put your
no.
feet in, and it kind of puts you into a sort of like an incline squat. But for a lot of people, they would prefer to be on all fours. So you want to know whether those things switch around or what they can do, or are you going to be? I can't interfere with their birth, but are you going to be in a facility where
They allow you
your
to
gynae
move.
or your midwife, allows you to move, allows you not? Will you be with the midwife more? Because the midwife is the one who really gets you through the birth.
Yeah. I had
that kind of thing.
a friend of mine in Abu Dhabi. She said she had the most amazing midwife, and she was too late to have an epidural. So the midwife was like, all right, let's go on all fours. And she literally got onto
Yeah.
all fours, and then out it came.
Yeah.
Obviously not that easily, but
No, no.
it's
It's a
quite
bit of coughing.
interesting. Yeah, because there's a lot of different approaches where women just have to lay on their back. And
Which is that's going to be hard, actually. But trying to explain to somebody who's never had a baby, look, you're going to need your shoulder strength if you're on all fours. You've got to spend some time in 4-point kneeling. So there we go. You're going to need to be able to squat. You're going to need to be able to use your lungs. You have to be able to breathe. And if you work your training sessions and incorporate all those kind of things, but do them within good sequencing so that they get a good workout, because we need to come out of the workouts feeling they've exercised. But if you do those, it really does help their birth.
So what would you recommend that fitness professionals incorporate into a training session when they're seeing somebody who might be pregnant?
Okay, so every time they are coming into a session, they need to look at their client with fresh eyes every single day. Be ready to be flexible in what you want to do. I always have an approximate workout planned, but you might have to shelve that. It's not like training other people where you can plan your program along kind of a periodized route way. Don't be tired. Be fresh. You know, talk to them all the time, but keep observing. Because sometimes they're just too tired or too wrecked to talk, or they don't know what they feel like. They're
So
emotional.
when you said don't be tired, be fresh, is that a recommendation to PTs?
Yeah.
Why do you say that? I'm curious.
I think that PTs have pressures for their own lives and tend to run things back to back. And there's some of training pregnant women can be limiting. You know, you haven't got the same spectrum to pick upon. So you have to take your spectrum and make it different, the same thing, but make it different to keep the client enjoying it and feeling that she's having some time for her and, and getting effects. But I think you've got to want to do it, because you will find it boring if you don't. I mean, I clearly am passionate about this kind of thing, but it's at the risk of sounding off-putting, I just think it's vocational. You really have to want to do it. You really have to educate yourself all the time.
I think it's the same with rehab, because rehab is a lot of small exercises, very quiet time, very focused in on what's happening. It's not clapping your hands, screaming and shouting at somebody to keep going, to motivate.
No beasting.
You're not counting a clock down, you're not counting reps.
Yeah.
Again, there's been times where I'm in a session with someone and I'll lie on the mat beside them to talk them through something, and I'll think, wow, if I stay lying here, I could drift off. I better sit up.
Yeah.
I better not, because it's like you said, it's that you have to be fresh, because each hour is someone's completely different experience.
Yeah.
So I agree. You need to find a way. Some of the guys I used to work with would have, this is when we were much younger, and they would go out on a weekend, and they'd come in on a weekend morning, and they'd be working with clients, and they have these different, where they'd hold their keys in their hand, and if they feel that they're nodding off, the keys would drop onto the floor, and they'd wake up.
Oh wow, that's
God,
bad.
no,
That's really bad.
Client, no,
Yeah,
no, she'll have fallen off a ball or
I-
something at this
You
stage.
can't do that at all. But
no.
these are
They can't do it at all. Yeah,
these are the
that's true,
tricks and tactics that some people used to
Yeah.
use, because they would choose a lifestyle that
Yeah.
leaves them to be tired and
I mean,
not
that probably
focused.
people in that lifestyle don't really want to work with these kind of people anyway. I don't want to go into my job thinking, oh, come on. I really don't want to do that. I've done that before. I mean, gosh, when I worked in offices, my previous bosses, hope they don't hear this, but I remember I used to think, right, I've done this stuff, can I just go home? I'm just not interested in being here. I just didn't want to be in an office. Whether I just couldn't be motivated by having a corner office or something.
And look,
It
I
wasn't for me.
think everyone's different, isn't it? Some people love an office. Some people love the corner office, and they couldn't think of anything worse than to sit in a gym on a Swiss ball and look at somebody moving up and down. That's their idea of hell.
Yeah.
Each to their own. It goes back to everything. You've got to do what you enjoy.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm hearing a lot from people and from discussions is that it's, for a PT, get yourself educated, get really qualified, find a niche, and maybe charge a little bit more, but do your job well.
Yeah.
And be responsible for the people that are in front of you, and actually have a little bit of, well, maybe a lot of respect for their time and your own time.
Yeah. You don't, I mean, as people say, oh, what's the expense for a trainer? But if you get a good trainer and see that trainer, just say once a week, providing that trainer has access to your life and sees and is familiar with other parts of your life and is calm enough to communicate with other parts of your life. For example, I got a new client recently who does private Pilates with somebody I know who is very good. But she wants a little bit more, and her Pilates instructor said, you've got to do something else as well. So she came to me and she said, what do I need to do now? So first thing I said to her was, stay doing what you're doing. Stay with it. Here is my number. Here is my email address. Give this to your Pilates instructor. Tell her to come back to me with any feedback she wants. I will see you on this day. You see these ones. I will not mimic anything you do in your Pilates sessions, because you're already doing them. What I suggested, because I am Pilates qualified as well, I suggested, for example, that she did because she's doing these classes anyway. I said, try and do a little bit more functional work, like mat work. not just all reformer and things, because reformer is brilliant, but if it's the only thing you're doing, it's not always, you're not on your feet, and that's functional for real life. So I think that you need to be calm and confident enough to say, that's okay, you can see other people, you can do what you like, it's absolutely fine. I'm really happy to work with them. And I'm very suspicious, for example, of people like, you'll get the odd nutritionist or something who says, you must not exercise, I will not liaise with the person who works with you, this kind of thing. I think, okay, that's your choice, but this is where personal training becomes coaching, I think.
Yeah.
Personal coaching, and that's what I feel is the whole thing, that with women, you have to coach. You cannot go in. I don't know really what it's like training big guys. Maybe that is just a case of telling them, I don't know, to eat certain foods and beast them a bit. But for the women, and I'm sure it's not, because I'm sure
I don't
very
think,
different.
Keith, you don't train that many huge guys, do you?
No, not in the kind of bodybuilding realm. No.
Yeah.
I get guys who do muscle building exercises, but they're your run of the mill kind of man. I think that you get a very different type of man coming to you, and it's all dependent on their goals. You know, like not every guy wants to be a bodybuilder, or not every guy. Ideally they like to be fit and healthy, but not everybody wants to pack on muscle. Some
They
people
don't want to look like that necessarily.
Yeah, some people, they just look because they know how much work it requires, and they're like, look, I'm not into that. I'm not into gymming 5 days a week and eating everything. I just want to come and feel good and blah, blah, blah. Or else, I play a certain sport. I want to be able to move for my sport. Or I've got a certain injury and I want to be able to fix this injury.
Yeah.
I've got kids. I want to be able to play with them at the weekend. After that, I need to focus on work. I need to do it. I can't eat very well because I travel. So there's certain limitations. So kind of what can I do? So we work within those realms. But a lot of, I think there's a huge crossover. People are very similar, male and females, in the gym, in the sense where they're all there to do things that they've got to push themselves. Now, this is your general population. This isn't the pregnant women, and it's not the injured women, because and the elderly, things start to change. But I think it's all just dependent on people's goals and where they are in their life. If they're injured, if they used to be injured, if they've had a really bad experience with a trainer, if they're brand new to the gym, maybe they've never been in the gym before, and they feel like they have to do something. So yeah, it's not quite the same as a pregnant lady anyway.
Yeah, I suppose by the nature of being pregnant, they're going to be not the same as the gym lot necessarily. Although a lot of them come out of the gym, and you see people doing amazing things when they're pregnant. But I think a lot of it is about the coaching. You have to look at them pre and post, and prep them for the post, because you have to get their sleeping patterns right. You have to deload them. They're all over the place hormonally. So you're constantly trying to deload them. And also it's training them into doing that for later stages, because when they've got a couple of kids running around, they're going to be stressed out of their head. And it's not so much what the children are doing, it's the fact that they're exhausted. I remember talking to one person, she had not had a full night's sleep in 16 months, okay? And that's a long time.
Yeah, and sleep is so important.
Yes.
So I can't
it's
function
key.
without
I mean,
more.
it is a form of torture. Sleep deprivation is a recorded form of torture. And how you're expected to make decisions about, ill children, and, that's why mothers end up going to the doctor continually, because they're just too tired to make a decision. I've heard people saying, they're always at the doctor. But if you haven't slept for months, you've got 3 small children, and one of them's a really grisly child anyway. One of them has just broken its leg. The other one seems too quiet. And then they're going into nursery or something, and they're saying things like, well, in class she's fine, but she doesn't really sit on the mat that much. And I remember actually talking recently to a newly qualified, but a fairly recently qualified, good teacher. And she said, why do they have to sit on mats? They shouldn't have to sit on a mat. I'm not saying stand up and walk around all the time, but you've got to work with these children. We teach them to stand up and walk and talk, and then we tell them to sit on a mat and stay quiet. No wonder they're confused. So that whole, there's nothing more full of stressy minutiae than having children in nursery or small children in junior
Yeah.
school.
To be honest
know?
with you, I find it just so admirable, like what women are capable of doing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Like going back to my mom, like how did she do that? 3 kids. Whoa.
Yeah.
It's and a full-time job, and like it's so
Yeah.
admirable. So then to step aside and actually look after your own health when you're looking after children at the same time.
Society teaches women to put themselves in second place to their children. Women want to because it's biological. This child contains your DNA. That child, you've grown him. I mean, I actually said something I said that. My son is 13 and he did something in a rugby pitch that was really good recently. And I jumped up and said, oh, God, that's fantastic. And another dad turned around and said, that's your boy then? I said, I grew him. And I just thought, actually, do you know what? I did.
From
'Cause
scratch.
I grew him in there and then I fed him and I looked after him. You know, I mean, obviously my husband was part of the procedure, but, you know, it's biological. You will do that. You will look at, research has shown, you know, things like the tsunami in Thailand and things like that families on holidays, the husbands or the men, I'm saying husbands, they don't have to be married, but the men turned to look after their partners, their wives, their partners, and by the way, got the passports. Whereas the women picked the children.
Mm.
So that's just biological. You're trying to work with it, and then you know.
Well,
and
at least there's one person looking after
It's
everyone.
teamwork, yeah.
Yeah, at least it's
yeah.
teamwork.
It's the thing, yeah.
You get the passports and me, and I'll get the kids.
Yeah, but then also, fathers have to come into the equation there, and that's another thing that women have to take on board because they have to have time with the kids, and they have to have time with each other, and your relationship gets pushed aside, and then you put more time into the relationship and still not looking after yourself. And in the meantime, this is all building up into a big postnatal snowball of negative toxicity. You know?
if women are suffering from postnatal depression, particularly when they're going out and looking for advice and personal trainers, what are some of the tips that people can use?
Can I just, before you get to that, how does somebody identify that they may be struggling from postnatal depression? Before
Okay,
and
so
then
as a trainer, you're not qualified to diagnose them,
sure,
but you're qualified to suggest that if I was in your situation, which you can say I was or I wasn't or whatever, I would do this. So, as a trainer, you need to also, when you're not going around looking at stirrups on a bed, it's a very good thing to be aware of what's out there to help them, such as empathetic psychology. So just have a look at a few centres and things, you know. I've done talks in one actually because I think it's really good, but then that can be expensive too. Have a look at what you feel is pertinent for deloading them. Now, mindfulness is a buzzword at the moment, but if you can really focus for these women on MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress release, not the cognitive therapy or anything like that.
So what is that?
It's mindfulness for stress release, okay?
But what tactics do you use?
Well, you can send them to somebody, or I'm a mindfulness coach, but not a lot of trainers are mindfulness coaches, and I work a good bit with. I'm working with Renee actually from Up and Running because we both do this together. So a lot of it's about women. She's a fantastic women's health physio.
Yeah, I know Renee. She's also a Pilates teacher.
Yes, yes, she is exactly. Yeah, so we're all in this
small world.
These are all. And you look at this women's health world, and you're looking at Pilates, you're looking at mindfulness, you're looking at physios, you're looking at support. I would just love to see us all in this, women's health physio, health coaches, mindfulness coach, everything working. I don't want to exclude men. I think men should have it as well. You should have your own. But
it would have to be because it has to be different.
Oh yeah.
Just different challenges.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it would have to be different. Gosh, whew.
Everyone in the same place.
That would be cats and dogs. Yeah, I have this vision. This is where I'm going in my head, and it's glass fronted, and you can see the beach and the sea. And I would love to see us all in there. And there's an exercise facility. There's absolutely no way in life I'm not going to recommend to people that they exercise, but they have to do what's right for them. Reps and sets are good for some people. Creative movement is better for some people. So you need to know, as a trainer, you really need to know, your stuff. You really need to know about multiplanary training, about prehabbing them, rehabbing them, referring them. And there's really good people in Dubai as well. I think there's really good people around. I mean, I love what PTC do. I don't love them when I'm in your classes.
Sure.
When I'm lying sobbing on the floor in my own sweat. Yeah, okay, God. Is it 6:30 yet? But I love that. I love what's in it. You know, I'm really humbled by what I see around me. I'm really humbled by, you know, Keith's knowledge and what I see Renee doing, and there's some really good people. Yes, there are an awful lot of not very good, and that's really sad. And I try not to be around that. And that's fine. Those people might change and become something else. I know these people, as you say, are in a gym trying to fill their slots and get the money in, but
I think that's also the natural. Sorry, I know we're digressing here. We were talking about postnatal depression, but I think that that's also the natural progression of a person within their own career as well. Because you can be someone who's just starting out and you might not be ready to do all of the other stuff. You might just be ready, like, I've got these exercises, I've just become a PT and I'm learning how to do this and I'm going to focus on this and I'm not quite skilled at doing the other things yet. So I think in that regard, we also as fitness professionals have to understand that everybody's in a very different phase of their professional career. So we're hoping that obviously everyone's going to get to a place where their thirst for knowledge is able to be
more progressive for them.
And Sorry,
and it's
what
it's what I want. What I like to see in. I think fitness needs to present itself with more humility.
I think so. Like, what we're hoping to do with this website is to expose people to different aspects of the industry and allow them stimulate their own brains. So take the pre-postnatal course, take the menopause course. If it's not what you're into, no problem. You've given yourself some education. Go down the route. Look, check out the rehab course. Okay, rehab. Now that's stimulated something in your brain. So now they can progress their own education down that route, and they can become a specialist in something in the rehab realm, and then they go on and they do maybe lower limb or they go upper limb.
That's exactly it.
So,
or even if they're not ready to do courses, just like listening to these podcasts and being able to go, oh, okay, well, I experienced something really similar.
Well, that's exactly. And when I came back from America, I thought, right, I'm going into rehab, and I'm probably going to go into education, which is clearly what I haven't done. But there's a crossover between rehab and working with women who need help.
Yeah,
and
particularly
that's why I fell into it.
Postnatally, you think about all of, even during pregnancy, you have diastasis recti, you have pubic symphysitis, you have lower back pain, sciatica. There's so many conditions that arise throughout pregnancy, even diabetes. So you think after pregnancy, you've got postnatal depression and the assortment of conditions that have arisen during pregnancy. So they
and
intersect.
Huge emotional issues and everything. And that's all hormonally related as well. And I mean, so many women actually come out of the hospital and say, you know what, I preferred my belly when it had a baby in it, because at least it was taught. But you're actually left with this kind of, oh God.
Yeah, you have a changing body, a human being that you have to look after. You have a changing emotional landscape, no sleep. It's just, it's a minefield, and like, I just all the time think women are just amazing. On top of that, trying to have careers and relationships and like a social life and look after
and body
yourself.
brush and put a dinner on the table. And
and it's like, oh, and I have to look after myself too. Shit, I have to brush my hair. I have to,
In fact, somebody,
we're just amazing.
This girl who hadn't slept for 16 months, right? And it was, we're obviously talking about her. She wasn't actually a client, she was a friend of mine. And we were talking about her energy issues. Obviously, have to sleep. And then it transpired. She would deal with her children in the morning, then go to work, stop at a garage, buy a sandwich, a pre-packed, awful sandwich, and she was vegetarian as well, so God knows what was in it, apart from awful processed cheese stuff.
And bread.
And bread, yeah, some sort of processed, fruity
sugar
thing.
bread.
And then she would go to work all day, drive back, stop at the garage, get a sandwich. She would eat it in the car because she could. She'd get a break and then go home. So she didn't even have the experience of sitting at a plate. We'd all love to sit with our beautifully behaved, fantastically dressed, clean children, looking out over the garden, nibbling on organic crudités. It's never going to happen. But at the least you're entitled to is a meal. So all we did was just change her food. Didn't even discuss things like, no, you can't have this or you can't have that. She kept having her sandwiches for a while, and then she started to change, and she started to have wraps. And then in wraps she started to have more salads, and then she started to have more greens, and then it just came around. And she was more energized because she had more nutrition. And I got her to drink water. Said, go to the loo at night time, leave a big bottle of water in there, go in there first thing in the morning, okay, lock the door, pretend you're in the bathroom, and drink and drink and drink and drink. So you're hydrated to start the day. So at least your body can then consume the nutrients, okay? And like there's things like I got her to do, for example, she had no core strength at all, really severely deconditioned.
Which happens to a lot of women postnatally.
And they don't allow themselves time. I said, go to the bathroom. I love bathrooms for women. Pretend you're running a bath. Just trickle the water so you don't waste too much. Here are your planks. This is what you start doing. Core engagement, da, 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 da. She wasn't doing planks, but you have to call them that because people want a plank, don't they? So just things like prone, activation and things like that. And start working on that. Then turn the tap off. Everybody thinks you're out of the bath then, and off you go. And it's only going to take you 10 minutes every night. So she started doing that. Now she goes to classes, she swims, she's great for food and things. But that's the sideline. That's the sideline of what really goes on in coaching pre- and postnatal women. You can't produce what you want to produce for their goals in your set couple of hours in the week, whatever they're 1 or 3 hours a week. You can't do that if the other parts of the equation are not working.
Yeah.
It has to be, you can't turn on a light in this room if the electricity's off.
Yeah, I think it's a lifestyle thing massively. But when you think about women and you think about pre and postnatal and you think about a woman after giving birth, so much of their life has changed. So I know that this is a very silly and different analogy, but I remember when I moved to Dubai, coming to Dubai and feeling quite depressed because I didn't have all of the things that I had obviously in Sydney. And I started to look at the things that made me really happy in Sydney. And I was like, okay, well, being in the water, going outside. And I started to bring those things into my life here, and it just changed my mood drastically. So I think for postnatal women, it's okay, well, what are the things that made you really happy? Let's continue to incorporate them into your life after pregnancy. Or get those things back. So there has to be a balance within your life. So you've got time obviously for your children to look after them, and also be able to look after your body and incorporate the things that made you really happy and feel fulfilled, remembering those things as opposed to throwing them out, being like, okay, I've just got a baby, this is
I've just got a baby, I've got to do reps and sets and have protein shakes. No fun in my life at all. And again, that's the misconception of fitness to people. I really think we have to change our terminology or something. They think that it's going to be horrible pain. Okay, it's not going to be, eating a bar of chocolate in a gym or something. But there's so much negative associations with improving your life. And actually, in some situations, it is appropriate. For some people, they can have time to... Probably not postnatally, but for some people, they have to step out of their comfort zone a bit more. But if you can, as I say, I think the whole thing of deloading, looking at the allostatic stress that has gone on through life, figuring out where the traumas are, and deloading in a very practical way. So I do think as a trainer, you need to know things. You need to have referrals. You need to know here's Pilates, here's yoga. For example, I don't teach yoga at all, but I know the differences between them. So I probably wouldn't suggest that a postnatal woman who had a deconditioned core went straight into, say, Ashtanga. I would say Yin would be.
No.
Well, go to Yin or try to and say, look, go and speak to them because I don't know enough about it.
Yeah,
or
I
I'll
love
contact
Ashtanga,
them for you.
Yeah, you need to develop into that practice particularly.
Yeah, Ashtanga is tough.
Yeah.
If you and know good people to go to, not this. I've seen people come into me and say, oh yeah, I've done Pilates for years, and it's okay, fine, right, let's see, can you just go into imprint and thought, right, this is okay, we're going to start back. And then you get some people who are really on the ball and really know things. So you need to know your referrals, who the different type of people are, and it's not just doesn't have to be just yoga and stuff. Maybe these people are going to be, some people are in a physical and mental place where they actually need to have targets, and some people, I mean, they want to do. They want to run a half marathon, for example. I'd refer them to somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd sooner stick pins in my eyes than run a marathon.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Go and train with somebody else. That's what you should need to do. Come back to me for your postnatal rehab, maybe once a week if you want to. Some people don't know how to breathe, so you have to. It's very individual. But I think if people can be taught, and if trainers can talk to people and explain the difference between training and just quietly and clearly the difference between training and classes. Classes are great once you know what you're doing. Don't expect classes to reap what training does. Okay, it's not like that. You can do small groups and it'll work. But explain the difference between those. Explain that you don't have to be sold packages all the time. You can work an hour here, an hour there, and as long as you're doing the other work along the way. I've got plenty of people who I see just once a week, and they work on with their other stuff. But communicate with them constantly. And make a point of, if I see somebody, say Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, I make a point of keeping in touch with them on the Monday and Wednesday. Sometimes I just get up on a Friday morning and send a funny picture to everybody that I have. But they're there. They know you're there to support them, and you're accessible, and they're not afraid. I hope that they're not afraid to come and talk and say, look, I'm really not enjoying this, or actually I'm deeply unhappy, or whatever it is. Okay, fine. I can't cure that. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, Catherine, you're going to be teaching a course for us for a life of education. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that course and what people are going to learn from it?
The pre and postnatal?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope I'm trying to use the most up-to-date research, and I'm not going to bang on the course all the time, but I'm going to very much suggest to people, if you like the overview I give you today, please go and do these other courses. Go and see people like Jenny Burrell, or check out YMCA. It's really easy, and they've got good stats. So we'll cover the trimesters and the approximations within those. But I want to keep referring to everybody as well that as the trainer, you're the one who's in charge of the program. So if you need to change things, you don't have to just do 12 reps in trimester 2. If somebody is able to do 20 and it's appropriate, go for it. It's fine, But also, if somebody's in trimester 2 and they still can't do a push-up, well, stop pushing them into it. Take them away, isolate them before you start integrating again. And remember, you've only got a short span. I would hope that they will get enough of an interest in it from the course to be able to go into that, be fascinated by the procedure
and the changing body.
Yeah, and so that their sessions with their pregnant client are something that the client knows they'll come away from feeling good. They'll come in and think, oh God, it's going to be a bit of work today and I feel really big and I'm really tired. But I know, and that's one thing my clients do say to me, I don't love coming here, Catherine, but I know that I will come away feeling great. And that's what you want. You want a client going out that door feeling exercised, yet still a bit flexible, tired, but yet energized with positivity.
Feeling better after than they did before.
So students are going
happy.
to learn about the 3 trimesters and what happens after.
Yeah, and then obviously what, the trainer should protect themselves legally, what you need to know, what you need to find. They have to give you the doctor's clearance, then you have to have that information. It's fantastic if you can establish a relationship with the doctors. They don't always want to talk to you, but slowly, as you have more clients come through to you and your name pops up more, they will send you the information,
And then you go through postnatal.
And your checks.
Will we be discussing any injuries or any things that people need
things
to be
to look
mindful?
out for, and obviously the other complications of whether they're feeding, whether they're not, how they're coping with that, how they're sleeping, and the ergonomics as well of how they feed is really important. How they feed the baby, not themselves. Obviously, they need to feed themselves, but as well, and the sort of hydration side of things. It's really basic, that hydration side, but people never give it enough, enough credit.
I think it's important what you said at the beginning, that this is an overview. This is like
Yeah.
to give everybody an idea of what the considerations are for a full term of pregnancy
Yeah.
and then post. So if that is something that they want to go into the realm of helping people to go off and do the live courses where you get the practical
Yeah.
exercises and you get
I mean, you can do really good ones online actually as
Yeah.
well. There's one or two, but yeah, if you can get the live, it's worth it. You know, anybody in fitness has to keep upskilling. You can't not, but you
Yeah,
should go
'cause
to everything.
like just like we were talking at the very beginning of the podcast, exercise like 10 years ago was aerobic step. So everything changes.
Yeah.
And pregnancy and women's fitness was bed rest. So
Yeah.
obviously as we do more research and as we evolve, things change. And as the industry evolves.
Yes.
So
I often think, you know what? It's like a piece of really great design. You know, it has to keep evolving.
Yeah.
It has to keep changing.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thanks very much for coming to speak to us today. Where can people follow you online? Where can they check out your stuff
Oh,
on
they
social
can-
media or websites?
They can find me on Pure Catherine Williams on Instagram, or just email me as kath@purefitnessuae.com.
Awesome, perfect.
Easy.
Thank you very much for coming to speak to us.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Catherine.
It's fun.
So Catherine's course is going to be available on A Life of Education really soon. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.